That was one of the questions that, yeah.
Well, for lack of a spur of the moment, agency is just the idea that people act as well as being acted upon. As early as 2001, when I was getting my undergraduate degree in Hawaiian Studies, I started in Maui, and I took classes in Maui, and I took a Hawaiian history class in Maui and a Hawaiian Studies 107 class in Maui, which is the class that I teach now. But the Hawaiian history class I took in 2001 at MCC, the book we taught out of was Gavin Dawes' The Shoal of Time. And the book, sourced completely negligent of Hawaiian voice, paints a picture of Hawaiians, like this gentleman did in the article, as people who kind of laid back and were acted upon. Prior to Noenoe Silva and others who brought out the anti-annexation petitions, prior to these documents coming out, that's the story that was almost universal in Hawaii, was that the missionaries came in 1820, Christianized everybody, then this happened, the overthrow, and so forth. Well, where are Hawaiians in that story? What did they do? How did they react? When we start to go back and look at those actions, then we see a dramatically different story. So for me, agency is just merely including Hawaiians in the story, and I'll try to be brief, but for an example, and my work is in the Hawaiian language newspapers, and for me it's just phenomenal because if you're looking at Hilo in 1871, and you want to know about Hilo in 1871, prior to this, we've gone to the Pacific Commercial Advertiser, we've gone to ship captains' journals, missionary wives' journals, and so forth. That was a tiny percent of the population. The other 90% of the population spoke. They spoke and they wrote every day in the Hawaiian language newspapers and other documents. And by accessing that voice, we see agency. We see not a description of Hawaiians, but we see voice from Hawaiians, and it's completely different.
The question.
Sorry?
Future.
Oh, okay,
future. Your research.
The future of the documents. For me, I think all of these documents and so many, many more are vitally important to us understanding many things. And I kind of see it on two planes, on the everyday physical plane and the spiritual plane. And those two do obviously mix. But on the everyday physical plane, Dr. Osorio wrote an article about 5 or 6 years ago called On Being Hawaiian. And it was a furthering of John Dominus Holt's article. And Dr. Osorio said that he said that one of the reasons that we are in the state that we're at today is because of huikau, it's because of confusion, that we don't know the whole story. So I think on a physical sense, bringing out these voices, bringing out these incidents help us all. We all have strong opinions, but there's hundreds of thousands of things we don't know. And when we start to understand these things and start to learn these things, it helps us shape our opinions. Yeah? So I think on a physical sense, just merely bringing that stuff forward helps us learn and helps us know. On a spiritual sense, I also kind of, in a way, feel passive about this process. When I was working on my master's degree, I was looking for certain documents that I knew were in the Hawaiian language newspapers, and I couldn't find them. And I was at Hamilton Library one night, and I stepped outside the library, and I ended up calling my Hanai auntie on Maui. And I was bitching to her, basically, and I said, I can't find this stuff. I know it's in there. And she said, did you pull it? Did you ask? Did you ask permission? And she reminded me that every time you go in the archives, every time you access material, you ask permission. And if it's the right time, and if it's the right place, then the documents will come forward. Yeah, she told me, she said, you can read a book 1,000 times, and if it's not the right time, if it's not your place, then you're not going to see what's in there. So that reminder to me made me realize that these voices that we're all bringing forward, these Hawaiian voices from 100 years ago, act. They act. We merely give them platform. So in my mana'o, my work is to platform the voice of the kupuna and the ancestors. And whatever happens because of that will happen. But so I see it kind of, for me personally, as kind of a passive process of platforming those voices. So that's why I think physically we learn, and spiritually what will happen is what is supposed to happen will happen. I did, yeah, and thanks for. I went back in the library, and within 5 minutes, I found the 3 things I was looking for. Yeah, so it's obvious, but.
Yeah, along those lines, I've shared before that I didn't find the documents at the archives until I had a small meltdown while I was surfing and asked for guidance. And the following week, my mother ran across 1,000 pages of Curtis E. Aukea's handwritten documents that were never published. So I believe in this process because, well, for me, the significance is that we don't get confused by what Americans tell us who we are and by what Hawaiian Kingdom subjects wrote and discussed who we were. So when I hear one of my students say, oh, that haole, I tell them, you sound like an American, because we didn't know Native Hawaiian versus part Hawaiian until 1920 with the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, with the territorial government, with the US government. So for me, it's looking to how our kupuna described our government, how they acted in our government, how they acted internationally, nationally, locally in their communities. It's not how Americans describe how they acted, because it's off the mark. And along those lines, with these good memories that I chose to bring out, just one example today, there's also these other memories that are not so comfortable. And so do we today as a community have the almost strength to know some of that story too? Because the more complete telling of who we were, I think, well, personally, I understand more who I am today from that. So for me, it's important. It's not just these are what some, ali'i and the staff did. This is who we were, and it's pleasant, and then there's some things that aren't so pleasant that, and it's an emotional process too to see what they went through. So for me, again, the more we know, the more we know. And it helps to, I see them as being all-encompassing, as being open, as being knowledgeable, intellectual, and connected to ka'aina, as being holding multiple epistemologies, knowing Hawaiian culture or epistemology, and knowing Western ways of doing things and doing it well. And they're not separate. And we don't have to have them separate today. So that's my mana'o on that one question. Thank you.
So just one more big hand for all of the panelists. I think it was fabulous.